Welcome to my kitchen, away from kitchen. Okay, I'm not really in my kitchen, but a lot of people thought this was going to be my kitchen. This is just a mock-up of my kitchen, using all the parts I've built. So, anywho, let's turn to Genesis chapter 19. We made it up to verse 11 yesterday. Lots of fun side things we've been talking about with Sodom and Gomorrah. Verse 12. Then the men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here? Son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, take them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this place." But his sons-in-law seemed he was joking. So, it's interesting because it sounds like he had actually a slightly larger family. Sounds like Lot didn't have just two daughters. You see, I'm assuming that these angels probably knew that he had sons-in-law, because they didn't mention them earlier, but here it says he had sons-in-law. It says he had sons. Where are his sons? Now, I mean, it could be that the angels were just asking him, not knowing what they were talking about, or just being general. But I don't know. I feel like there's a good chance these angels are talking about what they know about, because notice there's no son-in-laws mentioned so far in the story, but there were virgin daughters. So let's assume he's got at least two daughters still at home. He's got at least two daughters married and out of the home. And then he's got probably more than one son. And for what it's worth, that's pretty typical. I mean, for a guy to have a large family and whatnot in this day and age. So it seems like he goes to try and gets his sons-in-laws, and they think he was just joking with them. To his son-in-laws, he seemed to be joking. You know, too many parents, it seems, develop their convictions a little too late. They live one way, and then God gets a hold of them, transforms their life, and then it's kind of like their kids think they're just joking now. You know, we don't want our kids to think that we're a big joke. But if our actions do not line up with our words, what else would they think? Honestly, I mean, you have to practice what you preach. There's the old saying, more is caught than what is taught. You can't tell your kids, to not be promiscuous when your kids know that you're promiscuous. You can't tell young boys to be holy when they watch their dad oogle girls in a swimsuit catalog or whatever it may be. This is the idea, is that when righteous Lot, let's just keep calling him righteous Lot, because Peter called him that, right? And it said his soul was vexed, was tormented by what he saw going on in Sodom. So it's like, yeah, deep down he knew it wasn't right, but he also chose to live in Sodom. Instead of moving, instead of separating himself from all of this wickedness. In the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, backing up, there we go. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right? That's good stuff. And then it says fathers. Now, mothers would be included in this. They're looking to the dads to be the leaders. Lord willing, they would be. But it says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. What would provoke a kid to wrath? Well, you know what would probably provoke a teenager to wrath is watching the hypocrisy in his or her own home. When mom and dad try and force me to go to Bible study, but it's like, well, you don't go to Bible study. You know, it's like mom and dad want the kid to go to church 2 or 3 times a week, but mom and dad only go once. So why do I need to go extra? Why don't you go extra, mom? Why don't you go extra, dad? It's tough. It's tough because this is what happens when kids don't see their parents doing what we want to tell them to do. It's also tough when we live one way and then command kids to go another. Again, I just think of all the proverbs of training children up, training children up, training children up. But realistically, all that training is for nothing if they're watching their parents live different lives. Too many parents wonder, why did my kid leave the church when they went off to college? Well, I don't know, mom and dad. This is another question for you. Did you portray to them that church is important, but, I mean, you know, we got to do the family fishing trip, and there's football season coming up here, and then there's this and there's that, and even though all the other times of the year I'm very committed, but if there's something I'd rather be doing, well, then I can miss church for that. And the message, see, there's a principle. I'm not saying you can't miss church. That'd be dumb. But the principle is that if something else that I desire conflicts, I will choose that. That's a principle. So when children go off to college, leave the home, that's the principle they were raised on. Church is important as long as there's not somewhere else I would rather be. Sometimes we, as parents, need to enforce principles even when it seems silly. I have an example from yesterday. Maybe it was the day before. Little Benny runs on over to the Andersons' house next door and hops on their tricycle. And I asked Benny, did you ask permission to use their tricycle? And he looks at me and he's just like, no. I was like, then you're not allowed to ride it, Benny. Get off. Now. Heaven forbid Karen Anderson find out that I told one of my children that they couldn't ride the bikes. She'd probably be heartbroken because she's so loving and so giving and wants to care for these little kids. I go, but I know that she'd say yes. Benny knew that she'd say yes. So why not just let him ride? Because there's a principle. The principle is you don't get to decide when to break the rules. If it's not yours, you ask. And so even if it seems silly in this scenario to maintain the principle, we maintain it. To teach the lesson to our kids, yeah, we do it anyway. Even when I think I have a reason why I can break the rule, but we do it anyway. Otherwise, I'm training my kids that they get to be the ones who decide. I'll obey this time, I won't obey that time. There's a principle of I go to church unless there's something that drags me away. There's a principle of, you know what? Our family goes on 2 vacations a year, and those are the 2 times that we will, as a family, miss church. And we're going to go to church somewhere nearby I know, you're camping in the woods, you don't need to go to church. Hey, guess what? You can go camping and tell the family, hey, this is weird, but guess what? We're going to do family church because the principle is we worship the Lord on the Lord's day. And so even though I don't know anything about the Bible, we're going to open it up somewhere. I'm going to call the pastor before I leave and say, hey, we're going to miss church because we're going to go camping, but I want to do a family Bible study, so what should I read to the kids and what should I tell them? Because the principle is that we're a family that always worships the Lord. Again, you know, my son makes it to the state playoffs for some sport. I might miss church that Sunday, and I'm the pastor, and that's okay. But the principle he knows is that obviously there's got to be something really serious. There's a principle. If I'm going to tell a lie, I better have a strong biblical reason. Ooh, I've got one. Yesterday, some of you probably saw some of my shenanigans with a scammer. Someone probably from Africa, maybe India, Pakistan, who knows, but probably Africa, just going with the statistics, was pretending to be someone, right? And they were trying to scam me for money. And I have a tendency of keeping them on the line to just keep them busy. And I also report them to the government. There's a reportfraud.ftc.gov. You should do that. Takes a minute of your time, but maybe it'll prevent an old lady from giving away her life savings. And so I was deceptive. I pretended like I didn't know what he was doing. I pretended like I was some innocent person. And I think God was okay with that. I even pretended like I was a person who was worried that they were going to hell because I wanted this person to think about hell. I wanted them to think about, I started actually pouring out my soul about how I'm a bad person and I'm not going to go to heaven because I'm not repenting. Was I lying? Well, I mean, I was bearing false witness. That's a fact. Same with the 2 spies, actually all 12 spies. Because if you're a spy and you go into enemy territory, you're faking being someone you're not, right? So, I mean, that's lying too. But I can quickly and easily explain that my whole goal is sharing the gospel with this guy, and I was putting on a persona to try and get it to him. The principle of lying doesn't change, though. The principle of regular fellowship doesn't change. The principle of honesty, the principle of morality, the principles of we don't do this in our home. Maybe you need to spend a little time really considering what are the principles that our home is built upon. And if it's established as a principle, then it becomes the thing, the lens of which you look through when opportunities, situations, and decisions come your way. What is the principle? Principle is we worship the Lord on the Lord's day. The principle is that we are honest. Therefore, I got cut off for a second. That's the principles. So, Lot wasn't a man of principle. And so when he tried to save his family, they thought he was just joking because doing the right thing seemed so far from him, they thought it must have been a joke. Heaven forbid the day that you try to lead your children away from destruction, that they don't think you are a joke. Heavy truths today with Joe on the Revival Church's Daily Bread. God bless you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow morning as we continue through Genesis 19.